and to be able to make sure that we have a clarity around where is it we're actually trying to go and what is it we're trying to accomplish, the vision for what we need to remember that, or else it's easy for us to lose focus or not be willing to prepare, because if we lose the mission of why we're doing it and we don't have clarity on the vision of where we're going, it's easy for everything to seem pretty blurry to us in the midst of those steps that we need to take forward.
Welcome back to The Thermostat with Jason Barger. If you're currently on a commute, a walk, or just a micro break in your day, glad you're making time to step back, to think, and to reflect on the next steps on your journey. I've never been more convinced. The best leaders and team cultures in the world are the ones that make time to step back and calibrate their thermostat. I hope today's conversation leaves you feeling grounded and inspired. Now let's dive into today's topic to engage our minds and hearts in order to authentically lead and create compelling cultures wherever we are in the world.
Hey everyone, it's Jason and welcome back to the Thermostat Podcast. Wherever you are listening to this and however you're arriving to this podcast today, thank you for being here. I know it continues to be a strange world that we're living in, a lot of challenges and obstacles we've all been experiencing over the last year, but there are also opportunities all around us. And so wherever and however you're coming to this podcast today, I want this to be a place that allows you to take a deep breath, to experience some positivity, to put some good vibes out into the world, and to help you to be intentionally be able to step back. It has always been my hope with this podcast, always, is to create an environment that is content that is engaging your mind and your heart, is an opportunity for you each week to step back, to take that deep breath, to think about your next intentional actions that you're going to put out into the world. I'm more convinced than ever that the world, that authentic leadership is needed in the world today, and those of us that are a part of creating and building dynamic and compelling cultures in the world with the people around us and our teams and our organizations, that is needed more than ever. So thanks to everybody who's been a part of this, since day one of the podcast. Thank you and welcome back, and I'm so glad that you are here again. Thank you. And if you are new to the podcast and just jumping in, thank you for being here, and I hope you'll go back and listen to seasons 1, 2, and 3. Amazing episodes, great thought leaders that have joined me, and we've received tremendous feedback about the nuggets and the thinking that has supported people along the way. So I hope you'll go back and check those out. As always, thank you to everybody out there who subscribes, who listens, who rates, of course, 5 stars, who leaves a nice review of the podcast and shares it with the people around you in your network and in your team and organization. It's all those ways, whether I like it or not. I know it's uncomfortable for me to often ask that, but those are the ways in which these messages spread, whether I like it or not. The algorithms of the way that these spread and become, where people can access them and know about them is by people subscribing and rating and reviewing and sharing with the people around them. So thank you for everybody who takes the time to do that. I am eternally grateful for everybody who does that. Today I want to talk about, today's topic is a reminder to us all that sometimes the only way out of something, the only way out of a challenge, an obstacle, an experience, a project of something that we're experiencing that's challenging or tough, the only way out oftentimes is through. That oftentimes the only way out of something is through it. And for us to be thinking about what that might mean for our own lives and for the things that we maybe are wrestling with or experiencing right now in the world. So let me start out by telling a story. In my first 10 years of my professional career, many of you know this, so I'll just give you the quick highlight version. I was so lucky to be the director of Camp Akita, a big summer camp in southern Ohio associated with First Community Church, a very open and progressive and cool thinking church that attracted people from all different kinds of different places and backgrounds. I was lucky to be then dreaming up and leading these projects to thousands of people. Really, we mobilized to build about 125 houses internationally for families living in the dirt in Mexico and throughout the Dominican Republic. Gifts of just being able to help people that needed that. And then also to start and to lead a project called the Streets Mission Project to help bring supplies and food and basic necessities to homeless living outside of the shelter system in my hometown of Columbus, Ohio. Amazing work, amazing relationships, so many great people involved, and just helping us say, hey, how can we do good work in the world, and to continue to learn about the people that we want to be in the world and what we want to put out there. One of the things I was also lucky to be a part of during that amazing 10 years of my life and career was to be a part of a project, a trip every year, every summer, that was called La Vida, an organization out of Gordon College that was a 10-day backpacking trip in the Adirondack Mountains in upper state New York. 10 days where you would be out in the mountains with a small group of people on your patrol, and you would carry everything on your back, all your food, your supplies, for 10 days hiking through the mountains. And the whole trip was a metaphor for how is it that we then think about the type of people we want to be in the world and how we navigate our way through the challenges and experiences, and to lean on each other and to support each other even in the midst of challenges. The whole thing, La Vida, meaning the life, is a metaphor for how do we navigate our way through the world and the experiences that we're having in front of us. And I remember on one of those amazing, life-changing trips that I had of 10 days in the Adirondack Mountains with a small group of people, I would take graduating seniors in high school on this trip. But I remember with one of the years that I was with the group that I was with, we were hiking Whiteface Mountain, one of the tallest peaks in the Adirondack Mountain. And we started out, we knew it was going to be a really long day, and we had everything we'd packed up, we had everything on our backs, and we were hiking, and we had been hiking for about an hour and a half or maybe even 2 hours to start this day that we knew was going to be a really long day of hiking. And when all of a sudden, a couple of the other group leaders, the Sherpas that were with us, that were the guides that on us to help us navigate our way through the trip and the map that we were experiencing that week, they began to huddle, and they called me over as the group leader. They called me over, and they had the map out, and I could tell the look on their face. They'd kind of separated themselves from the rest of the group, but they had called me over, and they wanted to huddle real quick, and we were looking at the map, and they started to realize that we had made a wrong turn, that along the trail, when the trail forked to the left and the right, we took the one to the left when really we were supposed to take the one to the right. And there we had hiked about an hour and a half, 2 hours, basically in the wrong direction. And whereas we were supposed to turn right to go to Whiteface Mountain and continue up that peak, we took left, the trail left, which actually was leading us up onto Mount Mackenzie, which is another large peak right next to Whiteface Mountain. And so we had a decision. Were we going to hike backwards? And the 2 hours we had just hiked up part of Mount Mackenzie, were we going to hike back those 2 hours and retrace our steps and then begin, which was already again going to be a very long day of hiking Whiteface Mountain, were we then going to backtrack and then begin our day going up Whiteface Mountain, which by that point would be about 4 hours, 2 hours up, 2 hours back, later than what we were starting at? Or were we going to decide that we were already 2 hours up this trail to just go up and over Mount Mackenzie and experience that peak and then begin to make our way up Whiteface Mountain? And so in essence, it was already going to be a long day. Now it was going to get longer. But did we want to appreciate and experience two peaks instead of just the one? I have no doubt that there will be time in the near future, I'm not sure when, but where there will be power in congregating again, power in bringing your whole team together, your entire company and organization together in one space for that powerful keynote speech, that discussion that has to happen as a team, an entire organization about leadership and culture and mindset. But until then, we are in a virtual world. And so if I can add value to your team, your company, or organization through a virtual keynote speech, or just helping your team and organization have the conversation that's the currency for change that you need to be having internally, I hope you'll track us down and let us know how we can be helpful at jasonvbarger.com. And as we huddled together as the leaders, and we knew the decision that we think we wanted to make, but we needed to take this to the group and see what the group decision is. I still remember the look on everybody's faces as we presented this and said, hey, we seem to miss a turn, and here we are, and we're going to have to backtrack, and we've already gone 2 hours out of our way. The look of frustration, of disbelief, deer in headlights, like, oh my gosh, how is this happening? And then when we started to present the options of backtracking and or going up and over and now doing 2 peaks in one day, which was going to be a seriously long and strenuous day, you could see the look in their faces, and I swear some of them, they won't admit it to this day, but if the one of the options was, can we get a helicopter to come in here and get us out of here, they probably would have chosen that option. But it was in that moment where I remembered a mantra, and Outward Bound, which was not one of the trip. This was not an Outward Bound trip, but Outward Bound, who's been famous for having these kinds of trips and experiences of taking people out into the wilderness to have these kind of metaphors and experience the challenges, and as a metaphor for life. Outward Bound has a mantra and a saying where they say, if you can't get out of it, get into it. If you can't get out of it, get into it. And so all of a sudden, in the midst of that decision-making, that mantra was in my head, and as we talked about the decision we were going to make as a group, we decided together that if we can't get out of it, we might as well get into it. And so rather than backtracking, we decided to go up and over Mount Mackenzie to experience 2 peaks. And even though it was going to make for an even longer day and experience well into the dark, into the night, that we were going to, instead of just getting out of it, maybe the only way out of it was through it. And let's go through it together, and let's get into it in the midst of the process. And what ended up being, yes, still a strenuous, long, tiring, exhausting day, also included some of the most memorable moments and laughter and experiences together, that even in the midst of challenging situations, sometimes the only way out of it is through it, and whether we're going to choose to be in it. Lately, in pop culture and in the world of sports in particular, there's been an image that has been playing out in a story right in front of us. The Super Bowl was not too long ago, just a few weeks back or so, and Tom Brady has just finished, playing in his 10th Super Bowl and winning yet another Super Bowl. So, which is an amazing feat in and of itself, is just getting to play in 10 Super Bowls, which that means that he's been on teams and a part of teams that have been consistently good for so long that he's even gotten the chance to play in 10 Super Bowls, which many players, just the fact of getting to go to 1 Super Bowl in their career is an amazing thing that they're shooting for. But he's gotten to play in 10, and of course has won now 7 or 8 or whatever it is by now, even losing track. But even that is alone is an amazing feat. And so, of course, what's happened over the last in the media and acknowledgement across sports and business and all these topics is Tom Brady, the dialogue is now, is it official that he is the GOAT, the greatest of all time? Is he the greatest, not only quarterback, but is he the greatest, in a team sport environment, in a team environment where you are dependent on so many people around you? Is he the greatest competitor and most successful team athlete of all time? And obviously the data, the trends, as you step back and look at it, they don't lie. He and his teams have continued to get back, no matter what team he's been a part of. And this year he was on a brand new team. And, a franchise that hadn't been to the Super Bowl in a very long time. And all of a sudden, his first year with them, then they go and they win the Super Bowl. So the trends and the data doesn't lie. He and his teams have continued to get back and win when other teams have not. And what's so interesting about this argument about him being the greatest is what also doesn't lie is that his talent has never been appreciated as the greatest. seen as the greatest, and even today, people would not recognize it, that his talent is the greatest. And yet, there's this discussion about him being the greatest leader, competitor, football, person, a part of a team sport of all time, and yet his talent has never been the greatest. He is talented, of course. He's talented, but his talent has never been what has been the most significant. I mean, he was drafted in the 6th round. His senior year in college, he didn't even start, or he battled back and forth to be the starter. He was drafted in the 6th round. He's never been the fastest. He's never had the best arm by all the ways that you measure that kind of thing. But perhaps outside of those quote-unquote talent metrics, perhaps he's been the most focused, dedicated, disciplined, and prepared athlete of all time. Of all time. Undeniable of his talent, of his the metrics of how fast he is, his arm strength, all of those things. One of the things that's coming to the surface is that maybe what made him the GOAT is because he's been the most focused, dedicated, disciplined, and prepared of all time. The only way out for Tom Brady was to be through it and to get into it. And so when you start to learn, and more stories have come out about his commitment and his discipline and his focus, is the way that he has gone through his career is he's also thrown himself into it. And so his commitment to his diet, to his training, to his preparations. I mean, there's a story leading up to the Super Bowl where even in the midst of his 22,000 square foot home, which even to say that out loud is amazing, 22,000 square feet is how big his home is. But even with a 22,000 square foot home, he kicked his wife and family out, which that sounds harsh, kicked them out, but I'm guessing they understand his commitment and his process enough to realize that he needed them to be out of the house for the 13 days leading up to the Super Bowl. And so even though you'd think that they could just, hide in one corner wing of the 22,000 square foot house and he would have plenty of alone time or focused time, but still the commitment to this was, no, my family, we need to create this kind of separation so that 24 hours a day for those 13 days leading up to the Super Bowl, I need to have, this commitment. And so the story goes that for, 24 hours a day by himself in his 22,000 square foot house, he is watching film, going through his own preparations for the team that they're playing, the Kansas City Chiefs. He's texting teammates at all hours of the night where he's watching film and he's building a strategy and he's playing off the game plan and he's giving his teammates tips on, hey, when we're in this, we get this look, or when they try to guard us in this way, this is how we need to respond. And this, this commitment and preparation and focus, that the only way out of it was through it and to fully get ourselves into it. All of us, now I know you may be sitting there thinking, well, okay, I'm not Tom Brady, or I'm not Super Bowl winning quarterback, or I'm, again, there's part of that story where you're saying, okay, I don't want to live at my work for 24 hours a day, and I don't want to, cut out the relationships in my life and change my diet and do all those things. I'm not pretending as if we all ought to do that, but if we want to step back and think about elite performance and what have been some of these things that we can learn from about maybe the greatest competitor in a team environment of all time, it does make us step back and think about not just our talent, but what is it that we give our focus to? What is it that how we prepare? What is the commitment we make to how we prepare our bodies, our thinking, our development of our team and our strategy with the people around us? That no matter whether we are Super Bowl winning quarterbacks or not, all of that is transferable to how do we approach the challenges and obstacles that are in front of us, And sometimes maybe the only way out of it is through it. And then how are we committed to throw ourselves into it? And in that, throwing ourselves into it and going through it will often dictate how successful we are or effective we are at whatever the mission or vision is that we're trying to bring to life, to whatever it is that you're thinking about on the other end of this podcast. I know that in times of adversity in our lives and in our work, that oftentimes the only way out of it is through it, and then to make the mental decision to get into it. I've admitted to many of you at different times on this podcast and in my writings, my books, my keynotes, my ongoing leadership development with teams and organizations across the globe. I've admitted that not too long ago there was a 5-year stretch of my life where I lost both my parents in a few year stretch of one another. And it really became about a 5 to 10 year, battle of sickness and unfortunate things that none of us wanted to be experiencing. None of us wanted to be having to go through. It was too early for all of us. But at the same time, I had two of my parents that in different hospital beds, and my amazing siblings, my brother and sister and I, and all the loved ones of extended family trying to figure out how do we navigate our way through this. And yet the reality is that in the midst of that, those challenging times, those tough days and nights and moments that oftentimes there was no way out of it. The only way out of it was through it, and to make sure that we were in it with my parents, and bringing our best in the way that we focused, we prepared, and our commitment each of those days. And so the only way through it is often to be in it and to be there and to be present and to be focused. And then one step at a time, one foot in front of the other, what is the next action we can take? And sometimes we just have to put one foot in front of the other. As I'm working with teams and organizations or coaching individual leaders and coaching people through their goals, or through teams that are working through tough challenges or obstacles or even are experiencing a great level of success but are trying to figure out how do we even raise the bar, and we've always been successful, but how do we get to where we want to go next? That as coaching these people through these goals and challenges and obstacles or confrontations or any kind of building that culture within their team and strengthening the way they lead, I remind them that the only way out of it is through it. And also to make sure that we're in it, that we're showing up to the work with each other and the way that we focus, to make sure that we understand what the mission is, to make sure that we have our priorities, that we're able to identify how is it that we're going to travel together, and then the commitment to make sure that we together, focused, present, intentional, one step in front of the other, that we've just got to go through it, and we've got to be in it together. And in it and through it will bring about amazing, effective decisions we'll make, even in the most challenging and difficult and exhausting times that we might experience. In my second book that I wrote, many people know about my first book, Step Back from the Baggage Claim, and certainly have been excited about my latest book, Thermostat Cultures, of the way that is with teams and organizations. But a book that I love, my second book, is called Remember. And it's about, in the midst of a busy and distracting world, what is it we as individual leaders and entire teams and organizations, what do we need to remember each day? And how do we then, the book is written with a capital R, a little e, and then a capital M, remember. Because how do we then renew our memberships to the things that need our focus, to our priorities, to our goals, and to the commitments to the people around us? How can we renew those memberships and our focus to the people around us? And oftentimes there are a couple of elements to it that we need to step back and to make sure that we are remembering these things each day, that we need to remember what is the mission. What is our mission? And we need to start with returning to purpose and to asking ourselves, hold on a second, even in the midst of this challenging moment or adversity or time or these obstacles that are around us, what is our mission? And are we committed to why we're doing this? And let's return and make sure that we are fueled by the purpose of how we're responding. In the midst of that with my parents, or in the midst of difficult team environments, or companies that have challenges, or relationships that are struggling, to return to purpose and to remember, hold on, in this moment, before I take the next step, let me pause for a second and realize that maybe the only way through this or out of this is through it and to get into it. And one of the ways we begin to get into it is to remember, why do we do what we do? And let's make sure we're purposeful about what this mission is. And then we've got to remember, where are we heading? What is the vision? So on that day in the Adirondack Mountains, what was the vision for us getting to the peak of Whiteface Mountain? What is that? Where are we trying to head? And where is it on the map? And what direction are we trying to go? Because in order for the team to get in it, we had to have clarity around where is it we're trying to go? What is it we're trying to accomplish? How are we trying to create this environment so that we can get there together? And to be able to make sure that we have a clarity around where is it we're actually trying to go and what is it we're trying to accomplish. The vision for what we need to remember that, or else it's easy for us to lose focus or not be willing to prepare, because if we lose the mission of why we're doing it and we don't have clarity on the vision of where we're going, it's easy for everything to seem pretty blurry to us in the midst of those steps that we need to take forward. And then we also need to remember, how are we committed to traveling together? What are the values that we want to be the compass that are going to guide us to put that foot? What direction are we heading, and how are we committed to moving together? So as we look at those teammates around us, again, when I had to look at my brother, my sister, my extended family and relatives, and to say, we can't get out of this. My parents are in these hospital beds, but the only way out of it is through it and in it. Then we need to look at each other and say, okay, how are we committed to traveling along the way? And how are we going to lift each other up and support each other and respond in this time of need? The same thing as when you're looking at it, you say, okay, we're making the decision to go, now we're going to hike 2 peaks in one day rather than one. Well, how are we, not just where are we going and why are we going, but how are we committed to traveling along the way? And we're not going to blame, we're not going to complain, we're not going to moan to each other, but we're going to lift each other up, and we're going to help continue to rest, but also then put one foot in front of the other. And in the midst of every team and organization on the planet, when confrontations arise, when adversity arises, or just the opportunity to go from good to great, to make sure that we are aligned not only in why we do it and where we're headed, but how we're committed to travel and what those core values are that are going to be the compass for our journey. Those are the things that help us realize and move that we can't get out of this, but the only way out of it is through it and in it, and helps us shift our mind to get in it. And so in your teams, in your organizations, in the relationships in your life and your work right now, I have no doubt that oftentimes in a world that has been very challenged over the last year for sure, with global pandemic and issues of social justice and all political and economic uncertainty and all the things we've experienced, the only way out of it is through it and to get in it with each other and for each other. And so, as always, I want to leave you with some questions to ponder. What challenges or obstacles are you faced with right now? What are the challenges or obstacles that you're faced with right now? And what is the focus, the preparation, the next steps that would help you move through it? What's the focus? What needs your focus? What needs your preparation? And what are those next actions that will help you move through it? And on the road ahead, what does it look like for you and with your team around you to not just go through it, but to be in it together? Remember, The best leaders, teams, and cultures on the planet stimulate progress by taking one step in front of the other. And that sometimes we can't get out of it, but we've got to get through it, and we got to be in it together.
Thank you for listening to today's podcast, and I hope the messages and questions stimulate positive change along your path. As always, if these messages resonate with you and add value to your life, I hope you'll help amplify them throughout the world. Please rate, comment, and share on whatever podcast or social media platform you're using. And share this podcast with the people in your life or work who should be part of these conversations. That way, this spirit does, in fact, spread. If these messages or developing leaders and culture would be helpful to your organization, or you have a question or comment about this podcast, please contact us at jasonvbarger.com. And remember, we all are ambassadors for the culture we want to create in our life and work. We have to own the vision we want to be a part of. The future of leadership is you, is me, is us. Be a thermostat.